Well, it doesn't make me happy. It doesn't make me a happy camper, my friends, to not have very many good things to say about a film concerning a subject I care deeply about, my favorite contemporary famous person, Grace Vanderwaal, and being produced by people who seem to care very much about Grace and are quite creative and ingenious and industrious and nice themselves. This is bizarre, frankly. It's called a documentary. It's not. I'll get into that here in a little bit. It's more of a biopic, a sort of promotional biopic aimed at an audience. As you can tell from the title, don't assume what you don't know. That's not you and me, folks. We don't assume anything about Grace Vanderwaal. We love her early, middle, and late stuff. So there are no assumptions being made. We don't even have to assume what's going on in her life, do we? Because we can tell, even if you don't follow her on IG like me, a lot of you do, so you know better than me, but I can tell in her music. Darkness keeps chasing me. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's huge. That's deep. That's existential. Something is going on with this person. And it is earth-shattering. A better life? There's a drug-addicted person next to her. And she's self-deprecating all the time. I'm boring. Gosh, there are 3 dozen other ones that aren't popping into my head right now. But she's constantly getting on herself. This is somebody who is... Things aren't going easy for her. It's tough. It's tough out there in the human world, in the teenage world, in the adult world. You know, I don't need to be preached to about that, but that's what this documentary does. This, I'm going to keep calling it a biopic because it's not a documentary. And I'll get into that in a minute. But what this really focuses on is extended passages, extended monologues from Grace herself talking about how difficult, how troubled her life is, how she's having a difficult time finding her identity and expressing her emotions. Her family didn't express them very much. And being honest and frank with her audience on IG and elsewhere about who she is and what she's doing. Frankly, on the few IGs I've seen, I thought she was pretty good at that. But that's what most of this, or a lot of this, is about, including the last 9.5 minutes of this biopic.
Somewhere along the line, very discouraged about truly expressing my true emotions behind songs and everything.
Yes, while the credits are scrolling on the left, Grace is giving a monologue. By the way, we're not told when the monologue is. This happens over and over in this film. We're not giving timestamps or where it happened. IG, TikTok, whatever. It's not given. It's a technical aspect. I'll get into the technical issues here in a little bit. But so we don't know, but she goes into an extended monologue on a lot of those things, and I'll get into those in a little bit. But what this is essentially is a tilt of the hat, an acknowledgement, a almost sort of like emotional, oh, we're here for you, Grace, biopic. And there's a reason for that I just found out about yesterday by Claire Weitzel. I hope I pronounced her name right. I'm sorry if I didn't. Who was one of the main producers of this and editors of this, along with Mark Lalonde. So she made a post in the comments section of this documentary on the Vandervault YouTube channel. And I'm going to read that entire post to you. It's about the troubles with Grace's life that changed this documentary. Because if you watched the 30-minute preview 2 years ago, as I reacted to,
We signed up for the New York auditions.
And Mark Lalonde and several others commented on that. We had a discussion. But if you watch that, it was about Grace in the early years, pre-AGT, AGT, with some really nice voiceover by Claire herself, which is has a lot of punch and accentuation in it, unlike this biopic where she's almost got a monotone. It's like she's not excited. It's like it has this faux seriousness to it. She did a much better job in the first one, but the first one was about that AGT, and it had meat in it, and it had Dylan McKay in it, who was close to Grace.
Her content wasn't as bubbly and 12-year-old as I would have imagined.
Yeah.
It was very adult from the get-go of when I met her.
Yeah. That interview with Dylan McKay was astounding. We got so many insights into Grace herself. You know, how she was a one-off. Dylan was like, he couldn't believe it. She knew how to perform 10 years ahead of her time, as he said.
And she just was uncomfortable, but it was almost endearing. And then when she was doing what it is that she does, it was magnificent. And you could tell, anyone who's in the business or anyone who hangs around musicians, just tell that she has something special.
Her voice, the chords that she picked, you know, and he had to stop himself from stopping her because she just seemed to instinctually know what to do. It was brilliant. We don't get any of that in this documentary. There is nobody close to Grace who worked with Grace, Ito, or anybody else who's in this documentary. So we get no insight. Now, let me back off for a second. If you get told that there's a new documentary on the Beatles, Pink Floyd, Carole King, whoever, and you're like, it goes from the early years into the early middle or the middle years, you know, like Beatles, Please Please Me to Rubber Soul. What are you going to expect? I mean, the great documentaries, you know what to expect, right? Some clips of the music, them performing. You get some behind the scenes stuff. You get a little bit of humor, them talking about their music, maybe some talk with family members if you can get it, some talk with the production staff, some discussions with musicologists explaining the evolution of the music. No, not in this. Not in this. Don't assume what you don't know. A little bit. There's a little bit. Let me back off a little. There is one good section in this with Blake McLean, a music producer. And when they're talking about Letters Volume 1, he actually has several insightful comments on this. One of them concerning Poser.
But what's really cool about it from a production standpoint is that the big reverb on her vocal almost makes it feel like she is sort of just floating around in her own brain trying to kind of figure it out, and then in the middle of the song all that reverb gets pulled out and it feels like a realization moment, you know, like an epiphany.
After all that I told you.
Yeah, I'd never thought about that before. That is delightful. And then he had some good comments about Gucci shoes.
Grows, gets huge, and then drops back out, but then it goes into like chill pop. But it's incredibly successful as an intro because of that.
Stupendous. That is what a documentary is supposed to be about. Unfortunately, Nina Schofield didn't really have anything insightful to say. She said what just most of us say about the voice and stuff, although she made one allusion that was really interesting in hers. She talked about the acoustic situation that changes Grace.
So if we look at her when she's in an acoustic situation, there's a different kind of vibe. I think she thrives off of audience participation and the reactions that she gets from people.
But she seemed to lose track of what she was saying and didn't go there any further. And so the producers of this biopic, whoever was interviewing her, by the way, we never know who's interviewing these people. There are 3 different people. We don't know who's interviewing them. And that's a problem. If you watch really good documentaries, they'll switch over so you can see who's interviewing occasionally. but we don't know. It's anonymous. But whoever's interviewing Nina doesn't say, what do you mean acoustic situation? How does Grace change it up after an acoustic situation? Because that's the one time Nina said something actually interesting. That's a documentarian. That's what they do. They look for that. So why didn't they do that? Why did the Vandervault not ask penetrating questions, including with even Blake McLean? They didn't ask him, where do you put this in perspective? What she did with Letters Volume 1. How does it relate to Just the Beginning or Perfectly Imperfect? Or her later stuff that she did, Drive, Today and Tomorrow, and several of the things that she did in 2020. How does it relate? Or Repeat and Don't Assume What You Don't Know. There's a little bit on Don't Assume What You Know by McLean later, but it's not much. But so why isn't that asked? Why aren't they asking these things? And the answer is, and I'll get to this more later, is because they really don't care to delve in. Like a good documentarian, they don't want to go in and find out, how did Grace Vanderwaal become a genius? How did she do this? What is her early work? What's her early middle work? What's the middle? What's the late middle? What's the most recent? What's the evolution? Talk to music producers, musicologists. How did she do it? What is she doing? What's her voice doing? What are the instruments doing? What's her writing doing? No, not in this. So if you're looking for that kind of documentary, you might as well skip it. Seriously. If you want to watch this documentary as I did, because I was kind of dreading watching it because I figured this would be my reaction, but I went in with an open mind. It's like, I hope it's not. But I went in because, frankly, I just want to see what Grace does. Yeah, I want to see how they do it, but I want to watch Grace do her thing, you know? So in this documentary, imagine you're going to a class at the college on the Civil War. It's going to be on the 4 years of the Civil War. You walk in, the professor starts talking about Gettysburg, 2.5 years into the war. Professor goes forward. Doesn't talk about anything before Gettysburg. A few pictures, a brief little synopsis, but that's it. And you're like, what? This is documentary Grace Vanderwaal, Don't Assume What You Don't Know. That's what this is. They start at Letters Volume 1 at the end of 2019. That's basically where they start. There are no performances. Zero performances in this documentary before late 2019. No pre-AGT, no AGT, no Just the Beginning. Nothing. No that tour she went on with Imagine Dragons. There's some visuals. There's some silent film, just very little. No performances though. And there's pictures. That's it. All that stuff is thrown away, thrown in the trash. That first 30-minute preview documentary they did in early 2020, gone. File 13, folks, except for a little bit on Stray. And they've got Stray in this also. So they go from just pictures and a voiceover from Grace talking about basically, her inner turmoil and Don't Assume Me.
God, the amount of assumptions that have been made about me is baffling. I want you to remember, don't assume what you don't know.
Yeah, okay. That I complained to them a couple of years ago about this. They decided to go with it, whatever, it's their decision. But then after all of that little bit, it's like 10 or 12 minutes or wherever it is, they go into Stray. And of course, Stray is the sort of epical moment for Grace in the sense that she wants to take back her soul, her music, her production. Good for her.
This already is so much more me. And it feels so relieving.
And Stray is an ingenious song. So they spend a little bit on Stray, but then it's moving on. Because the two things they want to get into is they want to get post-Stray because of the audience they're trying to reach. And I'll get to that here in a minute. So for those of us wanting the early life, forget it. Forget it. Because that first preview 30-minute documentary was phenomenal. There was a lot of meat in that. They did a great job. I celebrated their job. I said so in a reaction a couple of years ago. I think it was June or something like that of 2020. It deserved praise. It was an actual documentary with all those things I mentioned earlier, people around, musicologists, people who knew, family, dad talking, Dave talking, Grace herself, behind the scenes, had it all. Not this. Not this. So then it goes into the whole Letters Volume 1, which is a masterpiece, no doubt about it. I mean, you've got Gucci shoes, Poser, I Don't Like You, You're So Beautiful, Waste My Time, The City, all masterworks. And Grace, of course, was evidently in charge of most of that. No wonder it's a masterwork. We see the kind of masterwork she's doing now that she's producing the stuff herself. So they go into that. Blake McLean makes a lot of good comments, but it's not put in perspective. And there's not quite enough deep analysis. They needed to bring in one or two more musicologists to talk about the lyrics and the sound and her voice. We needed more depth on that. The whole, all of her music needs that. I mean, don't we need that? I mean, it's why I started my Finding Grace series. I am an amateur. I try to describe all of that, but I can't talk about the instrumentation like some people can. I can't talk about the voice like some people can. Nina Schofield, she's great on the voice. And I mean, so that's what but that Finding Grace is the general paradigm that should be on any documentary. Finding the Beatles. What is it about them that makes them great? Pink Floyd, Carole King, etc., Chris Christopherson, whoever it is, Aretha Franklin. I mean, it's just Frank Sinatra. But instead, the thing that they want to get across is the inner turmoil of Grace. So they begin with it. They have some in the middle. They have some at the end. And then before they get to the end and all that, they've got, after the Letters Volume 1, they go into this sort of mishmash of stuff that Grace did during lockdown, during the pandemic BS. And so you get into some of those songs, but even them, there's so much fluff in this. There's 5 minutes spent on Stargirl with a whole minute talked about with Grace talking about Julia Hart, the director. Okay, great, but not in a documentary. It just goes on and on. The film footage goes on and on. It's like they had access to the film footage. Let's use it. 30, 45 minute clips could have been cut down to 10 or 12 or 15 seconds. We get it. That's amazing. Let's move on. You got an hour and 25 minutes. You don't have enough time to languorously hang on this stuff. So after the Letters Volume 1, you have the mishmash of stuff. But again, we don't have perspective. It goes into several things. Phenomenal stuff like phenomenal work by Grace. Happy songs. Back in the Backyard. Sally. Human. I'm glad they included those in there, but there's no perspective. It's just, boom, go to this one. Boom, go to this one. Boom, go to that one. Boom, go to that one. Little time date every once in a while. So what? What's that tell us? Nothing. Knew that already. For those who don't know it, they might be mildly interested. Really. So I'm not going to go into all the things that Grace says in all of the sort of personal turmoil stuff. What's it like to be 12 and 13? You've got thousands of people who are nasty towards you. I can't imagine what that's like. Obviously those of us who aren't famous, we had nasty people coming after us as well. So my heart goes out to Grace. And then Grace basically shits on her old music.
When you really think about it, it's not shocking that I hate most of the music that's out of mine.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it. I look back at my old writing and I'm like, but that was good. But that wasn't. As an adult, I did that. But Grace is not mature enough yet to get a perspective on the fact that her early work, folks, as you know, is absolute and utter genius. Yeah. 12 stars. I don't know my name. You're so beautiful. No, not you're so beautiful. Beautiful thing. Light the Sky, Clay, even Gossip Girl. It's those. That is master. That's a master at work. All of those are a master at work. 3 of those on the fly. So the fact that Grace says I don't give a shit about it, okay, we do. Thank you, Grace. Have a nice day. I'll be glad when you're old enough to understand, to go back and get far enough away from the emotional place you're in right now to actually sit down and go, damn, that wasn't half bad. Yeah. But the makers of this biopic decided they wanted to put that in there, keep that in there. And part of the reason for this is what I'm going to get to now, and that is evidently the reason that the primary reason they made this documentary was to show what Grace has been through. Yeah, that's what they're doing. So the thing that made this finally clear to me, because as many of you know, this was supposed to come out a long time ago. Mark Lalonde said it was going to come out, the first volume of the first documentary was going to come out in July of 2020, and then the second volume was going to come out in the fall of 2020. That got backed up, and then it got backed up again. And personally, I didn't hear anything more after that. It just disappeared during the whole so-called pandemic. So then they put out another sort of clip about the documentary coming in September. Oh, that was of 2020. And there were some conversations with Mark and many other subscribers then, but it was still supposed to come out soon. All right. So anyway, so fast forward to 2022 and it's come out. So it came out June 3rd, the same day, interestingly, as Hollywood Stargirl. So I'm like, okay, so before I saw this, I'm like, what's going to happen? Why is it coming out? But I decided to go ahead and, before I read anything, I wanted to go ahead and just watch this. So I'd be clear-headed and not be biased and just hopefully be extraordinarily entertained and instructed. Of course, that didn't happen. But anyway, so Claire, who goes by the tag name All Things Stranger, which I really like, she posts a comment in the comment section under the documentary, the biopic, this one. And this is what she said, because somebody said, what happened to all that stuff? I think it was Dieter Talk who said, what happened to all that stuff that was in the 30-minute preview? So Claire comes on, and I'm going to put up what she said on your screen in front of you. I'm going to read the whole thing because it's enlightening. This is why we got this instead of that, the previous idea. Volume 1, early years. Volume 2, middle years. Volume 3, middle, 4, 5, etc. Or different documentaries, Volume 1 and 2 on one, etc. This is why that did not happen. And they went to the middle of her career so far and included so much of the emotional turmoil of Grace, which, by the way, we've all been through. I'm going to get to that here in a minute. But this is what Claire said. As the co-director, there are many things we could not morally disclose. I mean, wow, is that a shot across the bow right there or what? Grace shared many intense and private details about her personal life around 2 years ago. By sharing said details, she potentially risked her career. This information was shared with less than 500 people, one of which I was lucky enough to be. Late nights between November 2020 and February 2021. November 2020 is about the time that Volume 2 was supposed to come out, but Volume 1 had still not come out yet. They were still working on it. I think they said they had 50 minutes left at the time or something like that. So this is happening while they're still working on that. Let me back up. Late nights between November 2020 and February 2021, I witnessed Grace being fully and brutally honest about her experience over the years. Wow. Okay. At that time, I realized our project had been going in the wrong direction. How could that be? How could it be going in the wrong direction? I'll read the rest of it here in a second. The direction is, it's a documentary. It's a documentary about Grace in the early years. What do you want? What do you want? Do you want to put some of the angst and social problems or family problems that she had in that first documentary? Okay, put it in there. But how is that the wrong direction? It's a documentary. After she says wrong direction. The original doc was almost complete by the time Grace left Interlaken and buzzed her hair. That would be early 2020, I think. 2021? Yeah, 2021, sorry. Okay. Back then, we had only intended to show that Grace had grown up into a seasoned musical genius. Yes, thank you. I wish you had done that. And that her art was something to be reckoned with. Indeed it is. But then we were led into the fact that her real story had yet to be told. Her real story, folks, there's two real stories here. The real story that you and I, most of you and I are privy to, is the story of the musical experience. Claire is making it clear here that she does not want, that is not going to be a primary. And this is where the troubles begin. Is when you forget. It's like even Blake McLean says in this biopic.
And I think a lot of songwriters kind of get lost in this overcomplication of their music, or trying to be experimental, or trying to be so different, you know, that they end up losing the music and the message in that.
Yeah, you go with your original idea. You don't try to overcomplicate. You got the iceberg coming at you. You better freaking turn now. Get it going on the straight and narrow. All right, her real story had yet to be told. But then, the most important thing to me was to tell this story. Do you think that got told, folks? Did that story get told in this biopic? Maybe, I guess. Who knows? The story. The one that scared the scared 12-year-old would have told if she could. We still told the story to the best of our ability, just a little differently. A little differently? Wow. Talk about an understatement. Of the year, of the freaking decade. This isn't a little different. Watch that 30-minute documentary. Watch this. This is not a little different. This is an entirely new animal. This is, in evolution, this would be humans. Whereas before it was apes, chimpanzees. This is kind, not degree. This isn't a little different. It's disingenuous to say that. I hope that is acceptable. No, it's not. And I hope that someday it'll be okay for her to tell everyone the truth about her life. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I mean, fuck this modern, I got to spill my guts all over the goddamn landscape. Which, frankly, is part of what this biopic is. It's Grace spilling her guts. I really don't want to know. It's one reason why I don't watch her or anybody else on IG, including my daughter. I just don't want to know. I just want the final product. Yes, my very close friends, I know all about their lives because they are my close friends. We share everything, trials, tribulations, depression, everything, because they are my close friends. They are not on IG. They're not IG people. I don't want to know. So no, Claire. I hope she doesn't feel okay to tell everyone. I hope she keeps it personal and just gets on with her musical life. And then Claire says, but for now, this is all we can give you for the good of her private life, career, and our reputation. Well, part of your reputation, Claire and Mark, is this biopic. Let's don't call it a documentary. It's not. So now the last thing, the title. Don't assume what you don't know. It sounds like something a frickin' teenager would say. And when Grace, don't assume what you don't know. It's what we said when I was a kid, except we didn't say it like that. We said, you think you know me? You don't know me. That's the same thing. Don't assume what you don't know. I'm sure it's been said by every single generation in the history of the earth. Don't assume what you don't know. Frank Sinatra himself had a problem in his early career. He was called the little funny sounding wop, derogatory. And he was embarrassed. He spent 2-3 years refining his voice because he got pigeonholed, like Grace got pigeonholed in her early years. We've all been pigeonholed. I was called Toothpick because I was skinny as anything in elementary school and junior high. And after I put some meat on my body in the 10th grade, still some of the assholes, the bottom feeders, the detritus that we all have in our lives, including Grace, they were still calling me Toothpick, even though I wasn't a toothpick anymore. Why? Because some people are just nasty. So Grace's experience is not unusual. Like this biopic is sort of tilting at. This is not unusual. What Grace went through, finding the identity, having people, in her case, thousands of people. Frankly, the numbers don't matter, folks. If it's 2 or 3 or 4 people, it gets under your skin. And especially if you have personal contact with them, it's perhaps even more intense than 1,000 or 2,000 strangers online. We've all been through it. They're making it seem like Grace went through more. And if what she went through, because they can't morally disclose it, and that it was, how does she say, Grace being fully and brutally honest about her experience over the years, that sounds terrible. I hope it's not as terrible as our minds take it. Then let me just say, I've had 5-6 dozen female friends over the years, close friends. And that would include some of them who I was in a relationship with. It breaks my heart to say that 25 or 20% of those women were abused. Sexually abused. As children, family members, extended family members, etc. I heard the stories. I don't think that's the case with Grace. I hope to God it never went that far. I'm going to just assume, yes, I'm going to assume, don't assume, I'm going to assume that it didn't go quite that far. Maybe it was some sort of psychological torture with somebody in her life, Hopefully it didn't go that far. But my point in bringing that up is that whatever Grace went through, hundreds of millions, billions of people have been through it to some degree or another. Some worse, some not so bad, some not as bad. So they've turned what should have been a documentary about Grace's adventure and music and genius from 11 to 18, start out in the early years or whatever. They've turned it into this sort of almost existential, emotive biopic. And it's not interesting. It took all of my energy to not hit the pause button and stop button at the end, 5 minutes from the end of the documentary when Grace was already 4 minutes into what she was saying about herself and what's going on. And she talks about a lot of things like the anger, unresolved anger. And as she says she's not an angry person, which seems obvious to me. You know, Grace actually seems happier, much happier. She's always seemed much happier than I was as a child, or my brother, or my cousins, or frankly, almost anybody I've known. Was there some dark element in her life? Without a doubt. Her music indicates that. We all know it. Anybody who's perceptive, paying attention, can tell something's going on. But as I've said many times about her interviews with Zach Zhang and several others, her frankness, as even Zach talks about and others, it's just off the charts. She's so endearing. She's not hiding anything. Just because she's got a darkness that's an aspect of her life, that it keeps chasing her, doesn't mean she's a dark person or an angry person or has a ton of unresolved issues. Of course she's got unresolved issues. Everybody does at that age. This biopic makes a big deal of that. And it's not a big deal. It's not. Been there, done that, personally. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for me. I'm sorry for my brother, my cousins. I'm sorry for Grace. I'm sorry for my best friends, my ex-wife, my daughter. I'm sorry for everybody who's gone through dark times. But a documentary, the only thing it can really do is to perhaps mention that occasionally. It's been tough. Have little quotes in there, little 5 and 10-second quotes. If you want to put it in there, it's good. It gives some substance to it. But this does voiceovers, extended, never-ending voiceovers by Grace. Don't assume me. How many minutes did that go on? The end, 9.5 minutes. There's a long section towards the end of the middle. It's too much, folks. It's too much. And I learned almost, in fact, what I learned on this, I really did want to know anyway, about Grace personally. My heart goes out to her. But frankly, I kind of already figured all of this stuff. You know, you listen to Darkness Keeps Chasing Me. You got to know. You know the story behind Better Life. You got to know. There's shit going on. You hear a few things or watch a few things about her and her mom. There are issues sometimes. I mean, what family doesn't have all of that? All right, so I just want to talk about a few of the details on this that really surprised me. One, the graphics are amazing, but they're overdone. It's like we don't have enough here, and so let's just graphic it up. One of the things that comes to mind is the sort of film reel sequence that just went on and on. But it is quite well done. But it seems to me, the way it came across to me was they're trying to appeal to that audience of people that Don't Assume is supposed to appeal to. And let me just talk briefly, just a little bit more about that. If you've got a bunch of people, a bunch of shitbags who went after Grace, and you think this biopic is going to get them to change their mind, they're not going to watch this. Do you think if a bunch of my friends in high school heard a whole clique of assholes call me toothpick, and my friends put together an 85-minute video on how I was no longer a toothpick and said, hey, y'all, watch this on Dax. He's not a toothpick anymore. They're going to laugh. That's the same thing with these people. This kind of animal, furry animal, human being who says these kinds of things about little banana pants, ukulele player, lovely, ingenious player, Grace Vanderwaal, they don't deserve our time. They don't deserve a documentary aimed in their direction. They're not going to pay attention, and frankly, they don't have the souls to connect to Grace Vanderwaal. I think this may be one of the things that the makers of this biopic don't understand. Grace is beyond her years. I know they know that. But Grace is not going to appeal to a younger audience. I mean, maybe Repeat, Don't Assume What You Don't Know, and You're So Beautiful, and a few things like that. But generally speaking, Drive, In the Backyard, Happy Songs, The City, Made It Out Alive, Just Kids. No, they're not interested, folks. Those songs they have too much gravity to them. Need Me Now, that was another one. By the way, this does include very short clips of several of those songs from the IG in August of last year, July of August of last year. But not enough. And there's no perspective. But getting back around. So what is the title of this? Don't Assume What You Don't Know. Who is it aimed at? Is it aimed at those naysayers? Those shitbags? Because they're not going to pay attention. You can start it off at Letters Volume 1 if you want. They're not going to pay attention. And then the people who've never heard of Grace, young people, if this isn't going to draw them either. And they're going to be perplexed by the title. Don't assume what you don't know. Well, I don't even know her. Why would I assume anything? So it's obvious this documentary was aimed at a subset of assholes in the music universe, in social media. Why? Why not us? We're the ones who care about Grace. Why not us and future generations of people, or people in future years, who really need to get a firmer grasp on what it is that makes this wonderful person a genius? What is the evolution in this genius? From 12 songs up to today, into tomorrow. It's unfortunate. I just want to say a quick hat off to Tommy Mars in this, who had a couple of nice anecdotes. I'm glad that the Vault kept those in there. They were sweet, brought tears to my eyes almost. And Blake McLean did a good job. I wasn't impressed with Nina Schofield, although I like her channel and I like her usually. They didn't dig deep enough with Nina, but hats off to those three for being in here. And my hat's off to the amount of energy put into this. It's just that, why change your mind, folks? Yeah, I won't go into that again. And then another couple of technical issues is the subtitles on this. If you click on the CC, the subtitles, it's spaghetti. It's spaghetti. I don't know if they can fix this, but there are words missing, words misspelled, no punctuation. There are wrong words. It's so bad. It just kind of blew me away. And then the volume on this documentary goes in and out. Even Claire's voice a couple of times. And then a couple of times I had to reach for my remote to turn it down or turn it up. So that's just inexcusable. After 2.5, 3 years, however long they've been working it, that's inexcusable. And then a couple of points, I mean, the subtitles just went in and out, but that was another issue. But another thing was into the movie a little bit when I think it was around 11-minute mark, when we hear Grace's monologue in Stargirl, you know, the big eraser, the giant pink eraser monologue. Well, the Vault doesn't put up where that's coming from. And people who've never watched that movie are never going to know that was from the movie. And it took me about, I was like, what's that from? What's that from? It took me about 3 seconds to get that. I mean, that's just standard professional stuff that you put into a documentary. As soon as something comes up, you say what that is from, or when it is from, or both. So that's missing. And there's several times there were things like that missing. Yeah. All right. So I hope they go back. Not because of me or whoever, or criticism. If they're getting any criticism on this, I didn't see any in the comment section on the Vandervault when I went back after I watched this, but it's I hope they go back and do their original idea. Bring in the musicologists also. Bring in the experts on sound and music creation, lyrics, voice, everything. Bring them in. You need some money to do that? I'll send in money. I'll send in $100 to the vault. If you need money to pay these people to analyze, and I'm sure a bunch of other people will too. Put it out there. Put it out there that you're going to do 11-year-old Grace through AGT. That's going to be documentary number 1, like what was originally planned, I think, volume 1 or whatever. And you're going to need $20,000 to bring in the right people. I'll send in my cash. Hell, make it $200. I'll send in $200. You showed in that first 30-minute documentary that you know what the fuck you're doing at the vault. And you fucked it up with this. So since I know that you know how to do it, if you're going to do it and you ask for money, I'll send it in. I would love to. Anyway, there it is. I'm really looking forward to all of y'all's comments. Please leave your comments down below. I know I was pretty passionate about this. I'm passionate about Grace Vanderwaal. Anyway. All right, I'll catch y'all soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye now.